Okay, in this video we're going to take a look at how to respawn or reset the player and the concept of a singleton in programming. It's very useful where you can have one object which controls multiple things in your level, and you want to make sure that you don't accidentally have more than one of them, which sets up some confusion. So what we're going to do here today is to create a respawn system where when the player falls into a pit and dies, we're going to have a quick look around and see if there is a respawn point for them, and if there is a respawn point for the player, if it's found, then our next step is going to be to simply move the player to this new respawn location and to set their movement to not moving. We want them to stand still again so that they just respawn and appear in place. So what we need in order for this to work is a respawn point somewhere for the player to actually appear. So this is going to be just a location that we save where the player will first appear, all happy, and then we're going to need something that controls it. I normally refer to this as a game master or GM type objects. And then we need something that is going to kill the player, so some way of making them go back and reset. And if this respawn point is not present when we press play, I want the Game Master to automatically create a new one for us. And then the rest of the code should automatically work whether you forget to set it up or not. And we can also build in a check, so if you have forgotten to put in a respawn point, that you get a big old warning and an error message telling you that you have screwed something up and you need to add a GM actor to your level. Okay, so let's start with that. We're going to need, first of all, we're going to create a respawn point blueprint. If I right click, I'm going to choose a new blueprint class. This is going to be an actor because it's an object that we are going to place or spawn in the world. And I'm going to call this BP respawn point. This is also going to be a very handy way of setting up a checkpoint system, because now that this actor is a custom one that we've created, we can move it around the level if we need to. And respawn point doesn't really need much in it. All I'm going to do is add an arrow component to this blueprint and place the arrow about 100 units up in the air, 1 meter up in the air. And this is where we're going to respawn the player when they die or hit our kill boxes and things, so any traps that we want to set up for them. So yeah, a nice simple blueprint. It's essentially just a placeholder that we can use in the level, and you can change the color of your arrow. I'm going to make this one purple just so that it stands out a bit. Right, the next thing we're going to need is some way of actually killing the player, so I'm going to create another new blueprint. This is going to be an actor, BP for blueprint, underscore, and I'm just going to call this killbox. And it's going to be a simple collider that if the player touches, we're going to send them back to the start of the level. Feel free to add in your own animations or fades in and out. This is just a demonstration of the principles here. So I'm going to add a box collider to this, and I'm just going to make this significantly larger so it's easier for us to touch it and test it. And just for the purposes of testing as well, I'm going to come down to the rendering section of the details panel, and I'm going to disable this hidden in-game option here then. So you can turn this on and off for all sorts of things, and the end result will be that if I place one of these in the level and now press play, I can see it, even though normally colliders like this are completely invisible. Just remember to switch it back off again when you're finished with your game, otherwise you'll have your colliders showing up in the level. So I'm going to leave that off for now. So we have a box which when I bump into, I want it to sort of kill the player and send them back to spawn, and then I have a respawn point, which is just a position in space to send the player back to. So let's just make this more obvious by putting it up here on top, out of the way, and then move my moving platform off to one side for now. And here's our kill box right in front of the player. So the actual the code is going to be relatively simple. It's going to be very reminiscent of the other things we've done on this channel so far. Inside the kill box here, I'm going to take the box, the collision component here. In fact, just to make this clearer, I'm going to rename this killbox collider so that we know exactly what it is we're talking about here. So at the killbox collider, if I select the component or right click and search for it, I want to look for the event begin overlap, and I only want it to do this if the actor which has touched this collider is equal to the player. So if that is true, I'm going to create a branch. So hold down B and click, or right click and search for branch. And this logic simply detects collisions with the player. Right, so now that we've detected our collision with the player, we now want to actually do something with this. So if we have hit the player, I want to find the respawn point and send them back to that. So how do we give this kill box a reference to the respawn point? Well, I'm going to start by doing this in begin play, event begin play, and I'm just going to do a very quick setup script. Normally you want to be very careful with the get actors of class node, because this is a laggy node to call, but on begin play this is where we want to do our setup for this sort of thing. So I'm going to look for the respawn point, BP respawn point, and if it exists it will be contained in this array that the get all actors of class node outputs. I quickly want to check that that does exist by running an isValid check. So we're going to get this array, we're going to grab the first actor that is found in this array, because hopefully there's only one respawn point in the level. I could also build a check in here to make sure this array is not larger than one element, but for now I'm hoping to only use one respawn point. Get all the actors of class that match the respawn point, get the first element in this array, remembering computers start counting from 0, and if it is valid, then I'm just going to save that. So right click on this link and promote it to a variable. We're going to save this respawn point. We're going to grab a reference to it, and I'm going to call that respawn point ref. So this is my reference to where the respawn point is in the level. So assuming that all works, and it should because I've just placed a respawn point in the level, we can test that now. If I grab our respawn point and place it here into my blueprint, when we touch the kill box, we're going to check to see if it's the player that's touched it. I'm going to grab the respawn point, and let's just use this isValid node again, copy and paste. If this is valid, then we will just do a little quick test, print string that says yes, valid, and if it's not valid, then we will say error, no respawn point detected. And then we can test that out. If I run into the kill box, we get a message up in the top left corner of the screen that says yes, that is valid. So far the logic is working, and our kill box has been able to detect this respawn point when we hit play. Right, obviously we don't just want it to say yes valid or no valid, that was just for testing. So now I'm going to replace this code with the respawn script itself then. Right, so we have the player pawn, and so this is what we're going to want to update when it touches the kill box. We're just going to use a quick and dirty method to shove it back to the respawn point. So we've got our respawn point. We can get the actor location, and this will tell us where the respawn point is in the world. And if we have touched the kill box with our player character, the next thing we want to do is to set actor location, and the target actor is going to be the one that just touched the collider. So this is going to be the player. Okay, you can reroute these nodes by double clicking on them to create a reroute node, and this will allow you to tidy up your blueprints if you don't like the lines going all over the place. And the new location that we are going to set the player's location to is going to be the respawn point reference. So let's just test that. If I walk into this box, I moved up here to the respawn point. And if I jump into it, I can go back. And so that's a basic respawn system right there. But you may have noticed that I keep moving even once I've teleported back to the respawn point. So if I run into this box at full speed, I'm still moving when I get teleported. If you want to stop that, we can use our reference here to the player character and the casting system in Unreal to reduce the player's velocity to 0, so that when you're teleported, you're standing still. In order to do that, we're going to take this reference to the other actor, the one that's just touched the collider here. I'm going to drag it out, and I'm going to cast this to the character. Cast to character. What this is going to do is tell Unreal, you have a reference to an actor here. This node returns an actor object reference. The cast node will tell Unreal, treat that actor as if it is a character. And you have two options here, success and failure. So you can always use the nodes like this, the casting nodes, to check what kind of object something is, if you want your logic to be driven only by behaviors on certain characters. And if this is successful, it also gives you a reference to the character class instead of the actor class. This is useful because the character class contains the character movement component, and the character movement component is where we can adjust our player's velocity. So I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit. There we go. So this is now hopefully a reference to the player character as a character base, and inside here we can get the character it should be right down the bottom here. It should be called character movement, sorry. Get character movement, there we go. Once you've got the character movement component, you can drag off from that, and inside the character movement component is the set velocity, and that'll be right at the bottom here, this vector for velocity. If you set that to 0, then when the player is teleported, this will only carry out if it's correct. So when the player is teleported now, they should also stop moving. There we go. It's hard to see, but all of my movement has been completely arrested, and I'm come back to the idle position, whereas before I used to slide around quite a lot. If I break that, we can test that again. There it is. Yeah, I have that little bit of slide when I move, whereas with this here, absolutely no movement at all. So let's run through this one more time. When we detect collision with the player, we're going to check that the respawn point is valid. And this is a great opportunity to put in a debug message. So I'm going to right-click and put in a print string, because if that respawn point is not valid, we want an error. Error, respawn point not valid. And I'm going to set that to red because I want my errors to stand out. If it is valid, then we're going to move the player to the respawn point's location, which we're able to get here, reference to the respawn point, get actor location, set the player's actor location to the new one. And then we're going to use the character movement component built into the character class to reduce the player's velocity to 0 and make them stand still. So this is a fairly simple respawn system. So what I could do here is if I just move the player start location up onto one of these other objects here and delete the floor on this level, I can use my new kill box that I've created, put it down under the level, massively increase its size so that it fills the floor, and now when I fall into the kill box, I'm reset to the player start location. But what if I haven't placed a respawn point in the level? Well, now I should get my error message. Respawn point not valid. I see my big red error message that crops up there. So it is partially able to tell me that I've done something wrong, but it would be really useful, wouldn't it, if I'd never had to place a respawn point in the level, and if one isn't in the level, then the kill box will automatically create one for me. This is a process known as a singleton, where you want only one of something in a level, and if there isn't one, then you create one, and if there's more than one, you destroy the other ones. We're going to start by using our kill box, which can already find out if there is a respawn point in the level here. This is what we're doing at begin play. So if this is not valid here, if when we get all of the respawn points, we get an array of them and we grab the first index of the array, and if that is not valid, that means that there is no respawn points. Okay, so that means we need to create one. So I'm going to do this by using the spawn actor from class node. I'm just going to move this all down to give us a bit more space to work with. Spawn actor from class. And the class that we want is obviously BP respawn point. The respawn point here needs a spawn transform. Where are we going to put it? Now, for me, I'm going to make sure that the very first respawn point is also this one here, the player start location. And you can get the player start location using blueprints, although it does have a couple of steps to it. So first of all, I'm going to get the game mode. The game mode is where you set the player class and character controllers, all of the setup before the level even begins. And in here there is a function called findPlayerStart. The findPlayerStart node will return whichever start location should be used for the player's next respawn point. So in this case we only have one start location, so this should return the player start location that we've put into our level here. And I can just get the actor transform for this player start location in the world and plug that into our spawn transform for the new respawn point. So this code here, quite useful if you want to get the player start location and then use its transform. So this will then create for us at the level's player start location. A very useful way to set this up automatically. So if you remember to put one in your level, a respawn point, then this code at the top will find that and save it for you. But if you do not remember to add a respawn point to your level, then instead this code will then create one and place it at the start of the level. The only thing left to do is to save a reference to it, just like we would have done if we'd found one using the get all actors of class node. So I'm going to drag the respawn point reference onto the blueprint, call the set node, and we're going to save this newly created reference in the same way that we would have if we'd remembered to place one in the level. So, does this work? We have no player respawn point. If I hit start and jump into the floor, we're teleported back up onto the platform. And if I just Alt-Tab quickly, and we can take a look in the level outliner here, you can see that a respawn point has been added to the level. If I stop this and then search for one again here, there is no respawn point in the level because I just deleted it. So this is a system that will automatically detect if there is a respawn point, and if there is no respawn point, then it will create one and place it at the player start location.